Hello, good morning, everyone. This is the Tibetan Buddhist Society of Canberra, regular Sunday morning meditation and talk. Today, I wouldn't have a set time for meditation, but you can still, as an audience, do the meditation while I'm talking, and I will be just as much as meditating while giving the talk. So the topic that I wish to do at least 5 parts on this topic is awareness of the self-addiction. It seems Buddhist people are often told to meditate and try to see the nature of one's own mind, and therefore try to see the clear and pristine and luminous nature of the mind when one actually sees the nature of the mind. If one is able to have the awareness of that self in during the meditation, the purpose of this is to see how one's perception of self, and therefore one's grasping to it as me and mine, actually leads to all kinds of the wrong and erroneous views. So the awareness of the self is only possible, and awareness of its lack of inherent existence, if and when one becomes aware of the deception, why we are ourselves deceived by the erroneous view that we are some truly independently, inherently existing so-called I, and so therefore the awareness of self-deception is very important. What they call in actual Buddhist philosophical study, finding the object of negation. So, of course, the finder of the object of negation has to be aware what is the object to be negated, and so the object is basically an illusion that one has of oneself, and knowing the illusoriness of that, and how one mistakenly think that is me, that is truly existing, permanent, independent, unitarily, inherently existing self, therefore becomes and continue to cause the deception. But so that's why people talk a lot about developing mindfulness through Buddhist practices in order to rectify certain behavior patterns of oneself in order to become mindful in everyday life. So the idea that mindfulness of meditation and mindfulness of mind itself will enable the person and have the power to become aware, to get rid of addictions. And basically, addiction is the root of all sufferings. Of course, in a modern terms of addiction, they usually talk about addicted to substances or alcohol, and in the Theravadan level Buddhist, we can call Sutrayana Buddhism, they always talk about how to become, not be dependent on the alcohol or drug or various things that one wish to enjoy sensorily, by possessing it, by tasting it, by drinking it, or by possessing them, or by using them. So when they talk about resolving addiction problem, they are only talking about becoming free, of being a user of the so-called problem objects. the objects, problematic objects, And of course, socially speaking, that is a very much a concern of the care industry, how we can teach youth and adult and grown-up people to not to become too dependent on those addictive substances, largely alcohol and drug and various other behaviors, But usually when they refer to addiction, they always talk about addiction to drug and alcohol. And that is very much covered by modern kind of, I would say, caring industry. They try to help people who are totally dependent on them and using too much alcohol and drug. And if they can take the steps how to become free from being a user of them, would be considered as some kind of reasonable liberation when the person is no longer addicted to drug and alcohol. So this is largely true in the physical world and social situations, and that would be regarded as at least a form of a first degree of recovery when the person no longer is addicted to these substances, and therefore he can relatively function better, sanely, without their body being abused by excessive use of alcohol, drug, and whatever the case might be. But remember, in Buddhism, we have this sutri level of becoming free of some causes of suffering, be they behavior, be they things one does, or be the things that one owns, use, is that kind of that's called what we call exclusive renunciation model in Buddhist practices. That's the very things that the whole Buddhist practice of monasticism or practice of exclusion oneself from having to not becoming dependent on greed and power and attachment, and therefore one try to leave, go from home to homelessness in order to become free from those socially problematic behaviors. So the modern effort of helping people to become free of addiction to drug and alcohol is very similar or very identical to the Buddhist teachings of try to abstain from one's actions and afflictions, which sways oneself and becoming dependent on such substances. So being able to renounce them, not drinking alcohol, not taking narcotic substances, not using violence, physically, verbally, and so on to harm others. All these things are kind of a basic and fundamental teachings that totally agrees with the social norms. But I think the Buddhists, if there is any in some ways, our social and our social expectation how people should behave in living in a society has probably just as good a higher standard of expectation than any religious tradition needs to step in to augment that. But beside that, the idea of becoming aware of the addiction to self is a very Buddhist one. So that's why I thought it would be good to see how the meditative awareness. This is awareness of not so much of external things or people or what they do to you or what we do to others, and in between how it harms us is a very very physical and outer and a social thing. But personally, individually, what really harms the person is his own addiction to the self, more than his addiction to external things. And if anyone is very conversant in the Buddhist teachings, or wish to become conversant in the Buddhist teaching, and also become realize the what actual teaching is trying to show is to become aware of the self addiction. I remember watching a kind of a conference that was held in His Holiness Dalai Lama's residence some years ago, when they were having many specialists in the modern helping industry together with His Holiness, and they all talked whole day about addictions, but not a single one mentioned about the addiction to self as the addiction, as the actual root of all the addictions. So this shows how superficial some of the Buddhist teaching can be turned into a kind of a little augmenting to the modern kind of a helping industry, but actually doesn't really raise the profile of the teachings of Buddhism. That is actually to give more insights that the modern science is not able to, or even though it wishes to, but it doesn't have, is that how individuals can become more metacognitively aware of the problem of self-deception. Because in Buddhist teachings, the whole aim is to not so much see the cause of suffering as objects. For beginner level or sutri level, the object of our desire, or objects of our anger, is one we try to give up or run away from. So the renunciation model suits the beginners. But once a person has actually gone away from the so-called object problem object, or problem people, the people will themselves find that even if these objects are out of sight, out of mind, they still have a lingering the kind of a propensity that is left in the person, even though they may not have the outer chances of offending themselves or others, because they are removed from those objects, but they are still deep down the anger, the resentment, and the hurt and grief and depression and loneliness and being unloved and not being worthy. All these things will be revealed even more nakedly after one has become free from those objects of addiction. So therefore, if one doesn't become aware, so this is an excellent opportunity to move to the next level of awareness of the self-addiction. So in Buddhist meditation, when you gain any insight of the objects of renunciation, the object that you renounce are only the screen to which you've been projecting yourself. But when you don't have those screens, so to speak, others to lay blame on and name and blame anymore, then we become much more cognizant of the very attitudinal behaviors, the very narrative which we have been talking and making ourselves believe becomes the problem that they become more manifest. So therefore, the sutri level of renouncing the objects of problem only enables oneself to know that it is not the object; it is the subjective mind of the individual that are colored, that are completely marred by one's own afflictions. So one has been masking all one's own problems by naming and blaming everything to the external. So once we become more cognizant of the individual themselves, not willing to take any responsibility, but always finding someone to go to who will listen our poor me story and making them believe that we are exposed to this or that one behavior or others, therefore we become addicted to that because of their influence. Of course, it says only part of the story, that such association with the drug addicts or alcoholics, of course, will influence us negatively to pick up such bad habits. But if one were to really to look deeper into it, there's far more unrealized cause of the addiction than the so-called external conditions. So this is why in meditation we become much more aware that even though you are now free from addiction of alcohol, drug, and whatever the behavior problems that one's life has been racked and destroyed, the person now realizes they have to now become aware of how much of that attitude and language and behavior and the kind of narratives they have been telling themselves so many times and believing that to them. Now they have to learn how to rescind those things. Until they become more aware of that, they will still have this animosity, resentment, no matter how long ago the object and things they have become parted away from, but still their resentment, anger, guilt, and their emotional baggage is just as heavy as they always were. So, if we are not aware of the self-addiction, it will continue to stay weighty and stay very much in the distress. So, therefore, awareness of the self-addiction is awareness of the awareness of something that we never thought was possible. We never knew our addiction to the self and our misconception of self with the body, for instance. So, for instance, today we're going to focus largely the awareness of self-addiction to the body, for instance. So, how much of our time and energy and our worries and concerns are all to do with I and me, that is my body, and with the health or with the lack of health or whatever the things might be going through. So our addiction to the body and our addiction to our wanting to be healthy, wanting to be strong, wanting to remain healthy, wanting to not to get old, all these things, this idea of trying to preserve the so-called permanent, strong, youthful, healthy, if possible, immortal body, this idea of self is the deception or self-deception to the body as me. So we call them the aggregates. Out of the 5 aggregates, this is the form of the aggregates. The form is the physical body that we identify ourselves to, and therefore we become addicted to this notion of self. That is the unscrutinized way of thinking that I am body, and therefore one actually becomes so unquestionably addicted to the notion of me and my body, and this could be, from our top to the toes, or from our outside skin to the marrows. We actually have not investigated whether there is a unitarily, independently, permanent existing body. This is not a question of the body's non-existence. Body definitely does exist. There's no doubt of existence of body. But the mode of its existence, the appearance of the body and reality of the body are 2 different things. If we think that I'm wholly existing self, that is independent, that we wish to be permanent, and that is a deception. That is the very addiction. We are addicted to something that is not the cause of our joy or liberation or happiness, but actually it is a cause of suffering. Like the person who is addicted to the drug and alcohol, he's a temporary kind of enjoyment with the taste or smell or whatever he or she is getting from the consumption. He thinks that actually is is worthy of possessing or enjoying and think. He does not know how futile, how hollow, how destructive that drug is. Now, of course, our community, our physical world and its community will point us to those drug and alcohol, and not so that you don't even possess 10 grams of it. And if they do apprehend you possessing, certain amount of heroin or drug or whatever, you are basically punishable, because they can spot that you are possessing, you're selling, you're buying, or or using them far too much. But who can police that the addiction to self? So that's why Buddhist meditation is self-policing, policing our own, guarding our own safety, and protecting our own safety, so that we do not mistakenly identify as a truly and permanently, independently, and unitarily existing self that is body. Whether it's the head body or the nose body or the ears or mouth or jaws or neck or the torso or the whole body, it is all of these are conglomeration, aggregate of many things. So to become addicted to the idea of self, that one is clinging and grasping to the body as self, is cause of suffering. Lots of people are denying and rejecting their impermanence, their physical body's impermanence. Yet they have this deception, thinking how to stay young and strong and healthy by doing this, by avoiding eating this. And sure, those precautions can be taken in order that the body does not collapse too quickly. So there's every effort is made. For instance, if we don't eat, if we fast totally for next 10 to 20 days or more, or maybe less, depending on health, we all will die. So basically, we are completely supported and nurtured and energized by the food we take, food and drink. Without that, there is no self that is in the body, or that is the body, or that is of the body. This body will slowly collapse, because it's like a flower that is not truly existing flower unless you water it, unless you prune it, and unless it gets sufficient light. So because the flower is dependent on water and light and so on, and soil and so on, otherwise there is no truly existence. The flower is basically is a manifestation of all non-flowers that has gone to produce. Likewise, we ourselves, however healthy and strong that we might be for the time being, but we are only manifestation of all the food and drinks and nutrients that we eat and drink and use, that actually has kept the so-called transient physical body as a relatively healthy. So therefore, we have to become aware that this addiction to self that we identify with body is the cause of all the sufferings. Even when you go to become addicted to drink, for instance, you're addicted to the taste. The drink in the bottle, even you have 20 bottles, by having them, possessing them, putting them in your pantry, putting them in your fridge, it does no harm to you. It's only when we become attached to the taste of it. Taste is the drink in the bottle is not some object of addiction. When you touch the ear, or when you touch it with the hand, it's because we drink. It's only when this small department of our physical aggregate, we try to please these lips and tongue, and I don't know what other areas it just any pleasing. But the rest, once we swallow, it has harm to the kidney and heart and liver. But we are therefore completely addicted to the taste of the drug or alcohol, because we think that I am the taste, because we become attached to the taste, and taste is to do with body, with the tongue, But if you think about the tasted to the body, it's only small square inch of the body. There the alcohol and drug bring some kind of stimulation and enjoyment, temporary enjoyment, temporary enjoyment. But the rest of the body, whether you pour the whole alcohol in the head, or you dip your whole body in the alcohol, or whether you apply the all kind of gin and tonic and all those amazing those things all over your body, you still would not taste and enjoy any of that. So that shows that we are attached to the taste of the alcohol by a small part of our biology, not the rest. The rest of the body have no relevance. Most of the body probably, if they knew the harm it causes, would probably protest, saying, look, please don't bring ever that to our body, because you guys might enjoy up there at the lips and tongue level, but we down here in the kidney and liver, and we do not like it. But we are not aware of the harm that our addiction to self and to the body is actually making us to be addicted to the taste, and therefore taste that is acquired from our addiction to the object. But to people who are not addicted or have never drunk alcohol, even for the first time, if they take a little bit, they would say, take it away and never bring it. It's never enjoyable. So that alcohol and the taste is not inherently enjoyable from its own side, let alone to any parts of the body beside the mouth. Even to the mouth, it is not enjoyable to most people's mouth, but only to the addicted. So this is what I wanted to increase people's subjective awareness is, if you have any particular addictions that society thinks is drug or alcohol, that addiction comes not so much addiction to the alcohol and the drug, but to the taste of it, which is a small part of we think it's me. Because of the tongue and your mouth and whichever part of the anatomy indulges in the taste and the smell or whatever that it is because of the addiction to the body as me and mine, and the taste and the flavor of me and mine, and therefore externally one is addictive to the outer substances. But if a person really gains his consciousness to therefore become free of the addiction of alcohol and drug, and then become free of any drug or alcohol, he's totally drug-free, alcohol-free person. There are lots of people like that. Lots of people are free from drug and alcohol, not because they were addict to it before, but they never have taken, and they are always been pure, and from that point. But still, they have so many emotional hurt and pain and resentment and guilt and anger without needing to resort to those outer addictive substances. So this is what I'm referring to, the awareness of the self-addiction. So their emotional problems, their anger, their resentment, their hurt, their pain and their grief and their sadness and their unworthiness and their unproudness of themselves is largely caused by the addiction to the self. And because one wanted to be so important, so different, so free of faults, and one has this illusory view of what one wishes to be. One doesn't really know. Even the self, that is body itself, is just a mere deception. It's a deceptive truth that we have thought I'm real and I should be this and that. Because I have failed to become that, therefore I'm miserable. What if you did become free of those? But still, if you have addiction to the self, that is to do with the body, you will go great length to make you feel tall when you're short, make you feel nose pointy when your nose is not pointy, makes your nose flatter when the nose is pointy. Whatever you try to make modification to your anatomy, from the top to the toes, or from the skin to the marrow, whatever you do, it's never satisfactory. Why? Because one has this deceptive view as one is this. I want to be this. I want to be doing this. I want to have that. Because one has this one is unaware that this notion of self that we identify with our body is itself an illusion. So when one become much more aware of this kind of emptiness of self, that is the body, then it becomes much easier for oneself to develop compassion to your past and to your object of hate or resentment, and seeing how these were all dreams that is caused by a very bad sleep, Because the sleep is caused by self-grasping to the body as me, and as a result of that, this addiction to the self as to do with the body, and therefore everything and anyone which we have previous problems with, we think it is to do with them. So we justify holding resentment and anger to them because we have this mistaken identity of ourself identifying with the body. So the body we have this what we call relatively dependently existing body. So there's no doubt about that. So whole idea of becoming awareness of the addiction to the self, that is body, is we just have to know actually body is changing, it is impermanent, it inherently does not exist, it came from many things, and itself is not unitarily existing. And the name of you is not identical to the body, nor is the body identical to the name. So these are merely labeled name, and we have adopted them as me or my body. But taking literally that these are truly independently, permanently existing self is the root, as the root cause of suffering. So therefore, the renouncing object is not really uniquely Buddhism. Society does that, always point finger at external things. But Buddhist means insider, one who recognizes it's one's own false view of self, then projects everything as real without realizing they are false in the first place. They're false in the ultimate sense. Relatively, of course, these are relatively true, what we call relatively correct relative truth, So they are relatively correct relative truth in the conventional sense, but ultimately even all relative truths are deceptive truth. Why is it deceptive truth? Because these are only depend on many causes, conditions, and so only the wise people know that these are deceptive truth. To the ordinary people, they are truth. That's it. That's the truth. They don't realize this is only relatively true to those who do not know. Ultimately, there is no self. That is the body. That is in the body. There is a self, but there is an impermanent self. There is a body, but there is a body that is not wholly existing, whether it's skin or the flesh or the bone. When you dissect and break down all of these different anatomical parts, there is not any one of them identical to so-called we thought was self. So that is the deceptive truth. You come to awareness that I'm not a truly existing self that is identical to the body. From whatever aspect of the perspective of the physical body, whether top to the toes, or toe to top, or inside to out, or from the back to front, or skin to the flesh, flesh to bones, bone to the marrow, and solid to the gas to the liquid, and when you investigate all anatomical part of it, they're all skin and they're flesh, and they are not no self. There's no name. They're only skin. The skin has its own skin. It's got different types of skin as well. Skin also has many different varieties of skin. And they are producing, they are drying, they are falling. They are constantly arising and falling, and just like the food we eat, most of it goes down through the other end, and just question is just how many 4 or 5 hours later, it's no longer the food. like this, our body is constantly shedding skins and drying the skins, and all the orifices are producing waste, and the body is constantly changing kind of a nest of lots of bacteria. So body doesn't really look as real as self and as permanent as self. Even self itself, therefore, is a deception. So being addicted to the self as truly existing is the drug of all drugs. And so when one is become a little bit more cognizant of the problem that is presented by the unawareness of the self-addiction, then one becomes somewhat saddened by how long we have stayed confused and uninformed in thinking that way. Now, when one becomes more aware of the self-addiction with regard to one's body, then one knows one's body is but impermanent, one's body is but not self, one's body is but not independent, not self-existing. It's merely labeled. If someone knows your name, they see you, they know you the name. But if you did not have the name, and then a person sees you, they don't know what to call you, because they don't even know your merely labeled name. And because they don't know the merely labeled name, if someone asks what are you, who you are, you just whatever you say, they think that's you are, even though you might be somebody else conventionally. So I'm often mistaken as a Filipino, for instance. So I don't have a chance to wear a name or think that I am this or I'm that, because people already have some assumptions of what I am. So I'm just merely conceived and labeled by somebody. But if I tell them, no, I'm such and such, I'm this, and they have to say, okay, maybe that's not correct. Oh, this is your name. Oh, this is your national. This is your ethnicity. But I do not exactly appear identically, truly existing physically to anyone. Why? Because I don't exist that way. I don't have any independent, inherently existing self that is identical to my body. So, sort of, for a person who has never seen any person from Tibet, when they see a person like me as a Tibetan, and they see probably someone else Asian-looking person. Maybe they think it's Japanese. Maybe they think it's Chinese. Maybe they don't know existence of Filipino or whatever. So you can see there is no independently existing me that is identically recognizable to anybody. But any kind of a subsequent cognizing mind they have, someone with black hair and olive skin and not Caucasian, and they have this assumption what I am. So as soon as I appear, people will conjure up a name and assume that it is. So this shows that how everybody's perception of each other, whether they see physically or whatever, they are totally dependent on what kind of a mental makeup they might have that they think is the truth. So of course, if it is something difficult to identify others, because they can't identify what they haven't identified before. They're only trying to relate to us as someone else they have seen. But they don't have any experience of what we actually are, because we have not been registered in their conceptual thinking what it is. But we have become so addicted in thinking who I am and who I'm not. So depending whether you think of yourself as a good father, or whether you think of yourself as a good scientist or good school teacher, or whatever you are, you have this huge kind of a list of things that you are, and particularly in relation to your body. When you talk about the awareness of the self-addiction to the body, you can look at your medical record. You can look at the medical record. as soon as you look at medical record, you realize that your record of your health and your body has changed over the years, particularly the last 10, 15 years. It has changed so much. Maybe years ago you used to be very healthy, but now no longer. You don't have the health, you don't have the height, you don't have the complexion of the skin, you don't have the same ability of the body, you don't have the same taste for the food, you don't have the same ability to digest. All of this shows that how much physically we are no longer the same self as we previously thought. What we could do, where we could go to, what we are able to do within hours, we are no longer able to do that. That shows our physical body and its strength and its ability has completely changed. So this ever-changing nature of the bodily ability, bodily function, bodily health, and bodily lack of health, all of this shows that there is not a truly independently existing self that is in the body, that is of the body. And so being able to do that, therefore, enable us to be more aware. Oh, for me to become addicted to the notion of I and me and mine, to the physical aggregate, is probably causing quite a lot of the hurt and pain because I'm addicted to the body as me. And so in any kind of discomfort, any kind of hunger, any kind of pain your body go through, we do not think it is in transient body. We straight away think, I am sick, I am unable, I can't do this. Straight away there is unquestionable, sort of innate thinking that I am body. Now, we are not aware of that. So, but if we become aware of this addiction to the idea that I am my body, and firstly recognizing it's an addiction. How do you know it's addiction? Because as a result of that, how much you're suffering, how much you continue to make wrong moves, wrong actions, under the sway of thinking that is so. So when we become aware how much mistakenly we are grasping and apprehending self with the body. So when we become aware of the addiction to the self that is body, and then we actually do not complain so much, I'm sick, I'm tired, and all these things. And we become much more cognizant. Am I? Because if you attach to the bodily comfort, then you say, I'm not comfortable here. But if you're not attached here, even you starting to feel the discomfort, you will see the discomfort is just constant. It's just question is which certain things. What if you think about something and you're already uncomfortable to think and talk about it? You might be physically living in a very, very comfortable place. There's all luxury, things to eat and drink and enjoy. All the five senses are complete. But when your mind switch on something else, that me, and then you could be completely injured. So are we aware of the idea of me to do with the body and me, and how much of that is become more aware. So we become more aware of that, then we do not develop some degree of aversion or the anger of the sensation or experiences the body is going through. But one rather sees, one become aware of how we create our own suffering by attachment to a so-called truly existing me, that is the body. So therefore your discomfort itself is very much made worse by this grasping to the body as me and mine. But if you think, no, the body is made out of food, body is made out of a parental fluid from the very beginning, and temporarily it has been sustained by food and drink and nutrients and so on. And when the bodily function itself are not quite strong enough, of course, you can't eat and drink enough to make you feel well. Sometimes most of the problems are because you eat that too much, you don't enough of that. Because of that, you are causing some of the illnesses and discomfort and ill health of your body by the very behavior of your own eating and drinking. And so when we become more aware of that, this is very important, oh, I'm addicted to my taste, and therefore I'm not aware of the consequences of eating delicious sweet things, and not realizing how that is actually affecting the function and health of my overall body. So then you actually see the body is not a truly existing me. Body is made out of composite of things that you've been eating and drinking, as well as what you're not doing right. When you become more aware of that, now you're aware, oh, I'm more addicted to the idea of self with the body, without realizing what I'm doing that can improve or deteriorate my bodily health. And that's why people become much more independent or freed from addicting themselves to certain drinks or alcohol or certain food. Once they know that it is what they eat and drink or don't eat or drink, enough of it or too much of it, that's actually harming my very transient body. Because of that, they're conscientiously able to take measures how to abstain from doing certain things, eating certain things, and particularly not believing self as the body, let alone a permanent one, let alone an inherently and truly existing one. When one is able to do that, then we become much more aware. You could then see yourself able to not only abstain the external food or drinks that are addictive to you, but you are actually able to get rid of your negative emotional, destructive negative emotions, how they have been unconsciously created by your own addiction to self. So when we become aware of the addiction self, we become much more good combatant with that demon inside us, and then learn to make peace with it. And instead of being aversive to your past or your behavior, but one actually become much more compassionate to one's future or temporary body, that we have hired this as a vehicle, or as a hired this as a vehicle or rented this as a vehicle, and then not let oneself become so what do you call, dependent on these things. So when one is becoming like the mind over matter, and then one does no longer see oneself as self. One sees oneself as aggregates. So aggregates. This is why in Buddhism we don't say how are you. We say how are your aggregates, and that's very important. Aggregates has a meaning of your food and clothes and things you do, things you eat, things you drink. And every single thing you eat and drink is good for some part of the body, but not to some other part of the body. And most people knows, I can't have this, I can't have this, I can only have this a little bit. If they know that, then they become much more aware of not a truly existing body that is self. There is a dependently existing body that may last a little bit next 15 years, that may live a little bit healthier if I avoid these things. And therefore we are not addicted to the taste and flavor and the quantity so much, because we are now aware that these addicted to them is the cause of our own ill health, our own lack of happy and healthy mind. When one is able to do that, you become master of how to abstain from certain drinks and eat and food and certain conduct, and you are therefore able to, I would say, very wisely able to see the transientness of your body, impermanence of your body, and because it's impermanent, we know what to abstain. For the durability of the body, you realize this is not good for this is not good for that, and even though this tastes good up here, but it's not good for the different parts of the organ. So then you become much more aware of the self-addiction, and you're not attached to taste and various things. You instead are able to eat fairly simple, bland and food and drinks, while your mind is very tastily enjoying contentment and rejoicing that you're making these changes, and therefore you're no longer always craving things so much, but you are contented that that you don't have to be dependent on those things, because that what you need and what you need to use are mere sustainer of the body, so that we can practice wholesome way of being alive. Then you have give rise to intelligent emotions of not craving things to eat or drink for the sake of the body, because the body itself suffers if you become dependent on those things. So therefore, addiction, becoming aware of the addiction to self with regard to our body, is the first of the meditation through which you will gain insight about the emptiness of self and emptiness of the body that is truly and independently existing. Now, when you have this insight, there is an amazing sense of freedom from suffering in that body because of one's lack of awareness. Because of the awareness, one doesn't have the anguish and anger towards ill health. Even your ill health, even you have certain symptoms of illness, maybe you're diagnosed with certain terminal illnesses, you don't have any aversion to it. You do not think that's terrible. One sees that as inevitable nature of all compounded aggregates, and since our body is one of the compounded aggregate, it too is subject to become a form and dissolve and vanish. Whatever you do, so therefore to be told that your body is not going to live long, it's going to die, is not a cause of distress when you have the benefit of the awareness. When you have the benefit of the awareness of the danger of addiction to thinking I am my body, which is permanent, which is real, we want to stay healthy. No matter who you are, the body is necessarily impermanent and transient collection. This is Buddhist terminology. Transient collection. It's just like all disposables, all perishables. You can have all the things in the fridge and they say, oh, perishable. Yeah, it's good for 5 days. After that, it's just not good. Just like, so how long is our body good to keep? After that is perishable. That perishable self is not self, not permanent. So therefore, it is transient collection that is called me or self with a name. So not to have attachment to such wrong views as self, and become aware of that danger of that self-addiction in how much we suffered due to that in the past, how much we can prevent from suffering in the future by learning to become aware of the self-addiction, grasping the body as real and permanent, truly existing, needs to be curtailed by the awareness. So that's why meditation practice means you're becoming fully present. So you become fully present in terms of looking at your body, like in contrast to what was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, let alone 30 years ago, how much your body is and it no longer it is. It has something. It is now your straight body become crooked body, smooth skin has become rough skinned, and strong joints become weak, and so you can see the body is constantly going through shift and changes, and this impermanent nature of the body is what we call perishable, what we call transient collection. So transient collection, you don't regard them as permanent collection. There is nothing permanent, let alone an innately existing single entity. It's not unitary and not independently existing. And every now and then we need to think of that in relation to certain physical pain or hurt or sensation. We should not become attached to the pleasure, not because they are unpleasant, because they're pleasant, but they will become cause of suffering if you become attached to them. Even pleasant experiences are impermanent. So therefore, lots of people are suffering from grief because they lost something they thought was valuable, wonderful, but they no longer have it. So the loss of the thing is not the cause of suffering. One's attachment to it as a real and permanent is. This is the crux of the matter, that one should become aware of the deception of self, that is body, that we regard to be true and permanent and in ideally existing thing. So this will be a good meditation subject for people to realize the awareness of usually addiction to self identified as body. And when one knows that self is not the body, body is made out of many things such as food and drinks and various other things. Itself is subject to change. So one becomes much more cognizant of this not truly existing self that is the body or that is in the body. They are only impermanent and constantly perishable nature of transient collection that are merely labeled and apprehended as such. The ordinary people grasp at that, but people who have the awareness and insight need to see there is no truly existing self that is the body. And this is a good meditation, good, I would say, realization that the teachings of the Buddha, the awakened one, is trying to influence us to gain this awareness. When you have this awareness, then your suffering will be reduced and prevented even, because all suffering comes from this deceptive view, thinking I am my body, I'm my health, I'm lack of it, I'm suffering because I have ill health. No, you're suffering because you're grasping to the body as me. If you try to reduce that grasping, become more aware, then you become much more free from suffering and their causes, because the cause is this lack of awareness that you are not the body. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. That's all we have time for. Thank you. Over to you. Next time I'll see you again on the second series on this topic. Thank you very much.